as we finish three powerful segments, one really intense, one beautiful, and one happy and talking about books and change, we come to the next big intense segment on today's agenda, the contextual bias, caste, religion, region, and others cultural diversity track that we have today. And this is our panel. A long, hard look at ourselves, identifying unconscious bias when we're embracing diversity and inclusion, something that all of us in different forms in the last couple of days have actually gotten introduced to in many, many ways. This panel has all the firepower to demolish our unconscious biases. There are societal stereotypes about certain groups of people that individuals from outside their own conscious awareness, from expectation of today's youth on corporate inclusion to the ground reality of biased laws and social setups, the speakers in this panel are set to give us a reality check. We have with us somebody who we missed last year's dive-in, but who has joined us here today. Parmesh Sahani, founder, Godrej India Culture Lab, and author of the latest book that's making the waves, Queeristan. Disha Vadekar, who's a lawyer. Mariam Haider, author and researcher. And moderating this Power Pack panel is Vandit Jain, founder of Lights, Camera, Azadi podcast. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let me bring in our Power Pack panel and hand it over to them. All yours. Looking forward to this one. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you. It's a quick mic check. Can you hear me? Also, a small correction, Shreya. Disha is not part of the panel. She had to drop 2 days back. Instead, it's Shweta Goswami, who is the founder and director of Nirmal Initiative.
Yes, so welcome, Shweta, and congratulations again for this Power Pack panel. I'm looking forward to it. So apologies on that one. Yeah.
Apologies, Shweta. Okay, great. Hello, everyone, and greetings to all of you, whosoever is watching us and listening to us in whichever part of the world you have tuned into the Dive-In Festival, the annual celebration of inclusion and diversity. At the offset, I would like to thank the organizers for extending this opportunity to me to moderate the panel. We have a truly diverse panel today. The organizers have done a great job in going that extra mile to make this panel full of equal representation. We have a balanced gender ratio, which I believe is the first step towards being more inclusive, and at the same time, we have diverse identities. It is important to talk about identities because in our society, it is largely defines our navigation, our past, our future, our comfort, and how we shall be treated and how we shall be seen. What opportunities will be given to us and what shall be denied. For the same reason, it becomes all the more important to curate spaces that have representation of identities and communities which may not enjoy the same privilege like many of us. Talking about identities, in this panel today, we have representation from a queer man, a Muslim lady, a lady from a denotified tribe, which makes this panel really diverse. And I think the only thing wrong with this panel right now is me, upper caste straight male, who will be moderating and regulating what these people will have to say. So my humble request to the organizers in the next time is please go that extra mile and even make this panel further diverse. But what makes them unique is the work that they are doing. And in alphabetical order, we have Mariam Haider, who is a writer, spoken word artist, creative communications manager with Red Hills Communication Singapore. She's the researcher of the best-selling book, The Billionaire Raj. She's also the co-host of my favorite podcast, Main Bhi Muslim, which aims at showcasing the beautiful Muslimness coupled with Indianness at the forefront. Parmesh Sahani, who is the star of our panel today. Parmesh is well-known LGBTQ activist, vice president at Godrej, where he heads Godrej India Culture Lab. His latest book, Queeristan, is nothing less than a revolution for the LGBTQ movement. And he has also authored another book in 2008, which goes by the name Gay Bombay. If Parmesh is the star, Shweta is the rare comet which we spot. Shweta is pursuing her PhD in philosophy from JNU and is director of the Nirmal Initiative. Shweta has engaged in numerous community-level projects over the years and has explored the philosophy of interpersonal sexual violence against children and its relation to caste at length. At the beginning, I would request all of you to go check out the wonderful work your panelists are doing and take an opportunity to know and learn from them. Our topic of the day is a long, hard look at ourselves, identifying unconscious bias when embracing diversity and inclusiveness. It is very important, and it was very important to bring this topic at the forefront, as there are a lot of mistakes we do as individuals and as institutions while trying to be more diverse and inclusive. So we as a panel decided that before we point fingers at the world, we would like to talk about our bias which we had. And as a moderator, I would like to begin with a preconceived notion which I had and I changed over the course of time. So as a young lad, I always had my prejudice against caste-based reservation. For a very, very long time in my life, I thought it was a very unfair system devised with the idea of vote bank politics. It was only in the last 3 years I understood the caste based discrimination which is rampant since centuries. I understood how systematically opportunities were denied to marginal groups, or rather groups who later became marginal. I understood the oppression which different castes and tribes go through in the past and in the present, and I understood the privilege that I carry as a Savarna male in the society. And that changed my view towards reservation, and understood that it is a very small but a very, very important step in correcting a historical wrong, bringing justice, equal representation, and mostly it reflects the true Indian spirit of diversity and inclusiveness. I think I've spoken enough. And now I would like to put the spotlight to the panelists. The reason where we have all gathered today, starting from Mariam. And Mariam, would you like to begin with one sharing of your bias which you overcome with time?
Can everyone hear me properly?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, perfect. Firstly, thank you so much, Vandit, for that beautiful introduction. And I think I'll go back to the introduction you gave me. So, the very concept of why I started Maybe Muslim as a podcast is that as a Muslim myself, I recognize that there are certain biases I carry about the Muslim community when I'm representing it. And that could be the way some women dress up. That could be the choices that women take when they are deciding to carry their religious identity. And I realized that as a Muslim woman, as much as I want to assert my identity, my work as a Muslim woman is to also have everyone else assert their identities the way they want to. So my preconceived bias about being a Muslim woman also got, I would say, smashed as I started recognizing that before I start talking about my identity, I need to accept every form of my identity within the community.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thanks, Mariam. Parmesh, what is one bias which you overcome?
Hi everyone, you can hear, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Great. So my actual bias was against straight people. And I'd always thought that straight people were maybe boring, which is not necessarily true. I thought straight people dress really badly, which is not true as well sometimes. And I'd also thought that straight people were often homophobic, which is certainly not true. In fact, if you look at the work that I've been doing, which is essentially over the past few years, Queeristan, so many of the allies of the LGBTQ movement in India, as well as of LGBTQ inclusion at the workplace, happen to be straight or cis het people who understand that our struggles are connected, and who say that we are straight, but we recognize what you are going through, and we want to create an equal world for everyone. So I've overcome my bias by meeting so many incredible straight allies over the past few years, and it's been quite wonderful to realize that there are straight people who dress well, there are straight people who have fun, and there are straight people who are allies. Who knew? So I'm so glad to have discovered this.
Perfect. Great. Shweta, apologies once again for missing out your name during the introduction. I hope you'll forgive us. Just like to bring the spotlight to you, and would like to talk about what kind of bias you overcame in the past. Shweta, we can't hear you. Hello. Can you guys hear Shweta?
No.
Shweta, I think you gotta check settings once. Okay.
Maybe you can disconnect the mic and try again.
Maybe there is some setting problem. If you can check whether your mic is on or not.
We can see you, Shweta, but we can't hear you.
Yeah,
So
we can't hear you.
hold on a second. On our end, it's fine. It's unmuted.
Yeah, it's unmuted. I think your mic is not recognized, Shweta. I think that is the problem, because all of our mics can be seen. There's a headphone symbol made in front of my
Yeah,
mic.
it's right now it's recognized, but it's showing on mute.
Say
I
something.
think because I did attend the one.
Perfect.
All right.
Perfect.
Yes, thanks.
Right, there we go.
Welcome.
Right. So yeah, I do not really mind because Atisha and I are sister. We are community members, so that's perfectly fine because I think we're gonna speak about the same thing and we represent our community. So my bias was with men because I have been working on sexual violence. So, but as I engaged with the deeper work, I realized that that's not the only part of the problem. Men are not the only part of the problem of this uh, phenomena of sexual violence. So yeah,
Great.
but I wouldn't take it there much because we're gonna talk about
Yeah.
caste and religion. So yeah, let's go ahead with that.
Great, great. Shweta, if you can just like keep the mic a little closer to your mouth, it will be even better. Great.
Is this it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect, perfect. Great. So talking about our topic of the day, everyone, and I really want to know that what is the current status quo of diversity culture like? How do you observe it? What are the gaps that you spot? What changes can we probably address? And at a broader level, when somebody talks about let's have more and be more inclusive, let's be more diverse, let's involve more communities, etc., etc. What are the gaps in the current status quo as you observe? And I would like to go in the same order. Mariam would like to begin with you.
I'm really regretting having my name starting with M on this planet right now.
Don't worry, I'll
But
jumble.
okay. Okay. So the question that you asked, I think the big question that I have when I'm thinking of diversity and inclusion in any space, not just workspace, is where is the discussion coming from? Like, if it is only coming from one, say, example in a workplace, if the HR is talking about diversity and inclusivity, then that is a problem, because diversity and inclusion is not a topic that only the HR needs to understand and cover. It's a topic that we all need to address when we are in any room engaging with everyone, with our colleagues, with our seniors, with our juniors. And it only comes from a place of being open to listening to everyone else's journeys, how they've come to the point that they are. And I think recognizing that journey and then understanding, are we talking to the people who come from the same kind of university background, to this from the same kind of countries? Then there is a problem. It won't always be on like one department to fix the problem, I would say, of when you say diversity and inclusion. It's not something to be fixed. It's a culture that needs to be reformed, and that happens with everyone. Like, me talking to you has to be coming from a place of me recognizing that my journey and your journey is different. And if that is the difference, then are there other voices who are also amplifying those diversities? If I could answer your question, but you
Yeah.
put me on the spot, so didn't get much time.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up, Mariam. Do you think that the current diversity culture does not recognizes the different diverse journeys that we all come from? It's very homogenized that way.
Absolutely. I feel it is now at a point where, even as you said, the unconscious bias is being addressed. The fact that we are becoming more aware of how these absent biases, which we just overlook because we don't have that vibrant community, reflect on the overall performance of a company, of a culture. In any workplace that you are, I think the biggest red flag for me is how many men are there at the position of leadership and decision making. And I think that is still, unfortunately, the majority of any corporate culture.
Got it. Got it. Parmesh, how do you observe the current status quo as we talk about?
So thanks, Vandit. And I see three, and there are three concerns to me in the current status quo. The first is that DNI still seems to be thought of as some form of altruism, that it's something that we are doing as some sort of favor or some sort of, it comes from this place of wanting to feel good about, doing good to include some communities, and not a clear recognition that actually it is extremely beneficial to the organization, whichever way you look at it. In terms of money, in terms of innovation, in terms of talent, in terms of the future success of the organization, especially in a pre-COVID world, right? So I think the first challenge is this mindset that, Acha, let's do some good for some people, as opposed to it is in our benefit to be on a DNI journey, because it's truly win-win, right? And that's actually the argument I use in the book for LGBTQ inclusion, but it's the same for any dimension. The second challenge to me is there's a big gap between intent and action. Even when intent is very good in organizations, and again, I'm so glad, we dive in, all the, member companies are incredible. I know so many of the individuals personally, and there's great intent. Likewise, in my own organization, Godrej, and so many others I talk to, right? But how do we take that intent and convert it into action in a way that materially affects the lives of many individuals? I think that's the thing, right? Whether it is policy changes, whether it is active hiring, whether it's talking about these, how does it become something that you do consistently over the course of time because you believe that it is in everyone's best interest to do so? So that's my second challenge. The third is echoing what you and Mariam said earlier about there are certain aspects of D&I, even within the D&I matrix, certain aspects are considered okay. So gender has been considered something that people want to focus on for years. Of late, LGBT and PWD have kind of become okay to be spoken about. But religion, caste, so many other dimensions are still not part of formal D&I, conversations, programs, etc. So I think these are three challenges that I hope that the D&I community and, people in the business world at large engage with as we go ahead.
Perfect. That's beautifully summed up. Shweta, would take the spotlight to you. What challenges and what issues do you find in the current status quo as we observe it?
Okay, so diversity and inclusion can mean different things, but of course, people can define it the way they understand. And I see it as instead of, and there has been a big market about this whole concern, diversity. There are now courses, coming up, mushrooming basically on diversity and inclusion. I think it is important to understand the philosophy, and I think we need to start talking in terms of belonging. And because even in this term inclusion, that I include you, has a power dynamics to it, where certain people decide who can be included and who cannot be, and where we can draw a line or a boundary. So, in my understanding, we need to start talking in terms of belonging and say that, hey, you belong here, and because they do, right? And they're not there like people from denotified nomadic community, Dalit community, and other marginalized communities are not there because they have been pushed to those margins, and now to reclaim that place is important. So the kind of words we use is very important because it is about our humanity and our concern within that, like who is where. So yeah, belonging is, I think, is important, that we need to think on the lines of belonging. And yeah.
Thanks, Shweta. Shweta, I would also like to give a little more space to you because to talk about your tribe, because not a lot of listeners or organizers may know about its history or where you come from. So would you like to take a minute or two to talk about it?
Certainly. So the British in 1860 criminalized certain tribes. Up to 200 tribes were criminalized, who were perhaps harbinger of, we can say, freedom. They never settled, and they were people who believed to live in the harmony with the nature and with the Mother Earth, and that is the only reason that they didn't settle in one place. And because now I wouldn't want to go into why British did what they did, but certainly this was the way to control people. And they were outside the caste system because they were not settled. Nomads would not settle anywhere to be a part of a society that is a caste society. So they were outside that. And that is what also made difficult for British to control. And that was the kind of control mechanism they used by criminalizing these groups. And after independence, we were decriminalized, that is denotified, but the stigma still remained. And because of that reason, most of the communities have adopted upper caste surnames so that they can survive. So it is not the idea that they want to be Brahmins or upper caste people, but it is the whole, it is a survival act of to be able to live. And after that, everything has been taken from you. So yeah, that is also important, that why people have upper caste and they are not upper caste. That's a survival strategy. So would you understand that like that, and not as a desire to be Brahmin or to be on the top of the caste system, or any upper caste for that, upper caste surname for that matter. So yeah, this is denotified communities. So you wouldn't perhaps know. Most people do not know. Even denotified community members do not know that they are denotified, because that's how systemically knowledge has been kept from people.
Great.
Yeah.
I would encourage everybody who's listening to us to go and research a little about denotified tribes. I think that will open a big box of history, stigma, and will increase our general awareness about DNTs. Also, that's a very important aspect that you touched, Shweta, about taking an upper caste surname, which brings me to my next point: is what is the vocabulary of inclusion? People want to be included, so sometimes they would want to be addressed and be sensitive about the way people are talking about it. And what I have also realized in the current status quo, as we talk about it, that the the vocabulary of inclusion may not be there. Maybe there will be certain passive aggressiveness, certain microaggressions. Like Parmesh mentioned that okay, we include you. हम तुमको include करते हैं. We are extending a favor to you. Can you guys talk about some instances, or maybe some that that how the vocabulary of inclusion is also equally important as much as the structures and the matrices are important, which is the day-to-day vocabulary that we talk about. Mariam, do you have any thoughts about it?
You said you're going to jumble up, right?
I will, but it's at the latter
Actually,
half.
firstly, I wanted to thank Shweta for using the word belonging. It is such a powerful word when it comes to addressing just the very concept of oneness and togetherness in this game that we call life. What we have done today is that we have created hierarchies in different formats. We've created hierarchies in terms of caste, in terms of your economic structures, in terms of your bodies. We have constantly tried to individualize you to the degree that you are aiming for something better. You are aiming to have like that, as Shweta highlighted, like the surname, like you will feel more accepted, you will feel more acknowledged if your surname doesn't necessarily classify you as a denotified tribe. I'm sorry if I'm not getting the terminologies right, but what I'm addressing is that at this point, when I look at the vocabulary, I'm always thinking, one, as Shweta rightly said, the power structure. Like when you say you belong versus saying we include you, it's a very different form of making someone feel accepted. And I think the second way of addressing this vocabulary is that you have to always be open to unlearning your own vocabulary. I think it always begins from what kind of terminologies have you been conditioned into using. For example, a lot of times, when I am engaging with people, one of the things which now I think is changing more and more is when we are talking about a hypothetical person like a manager or a senior position, it's always like, imagine a manager would say this and he does this, and what would you say to that? The pronoun is always he. Why is the pronoun he? Because we have been conditioned into believing that the person at a senior level, authority, leadership, is a man. So changing that vocabulary on a day-to-day basis, correcting yourself when even unconsciously you are speaking in a language. I think that has a remarkable difference. I see that when I'm speaking to my colleagues. I will correct myself in front of them because it's an unlearning process. I'm like, I'm sorry. I mean, what if they had to say something? And I think that has on a day-to-day a huge impact over time.
Parmesh, I am sure you share Mariam's views, but I would like to flip the question and twist it in a way that, do you think this is taking political correctness a little far? Like, I share Mariam's viewpoint as well, but do you think we are taking political correctness too far, or this is very, very important as well? as a part of diversity culture?
No, I don't think there's any such thing of, I mean, there's a reason why there are terms. So I have a whole entire chapter in the book called the Queer Alphabet Soup, in which I list out all the different terms that we in the community might or might not wish to use for ourselves. It's LGBTQ, but also Hijra, Kothi, Aravni, so many terms that have deep cultural connotations and so on. So I don't think so. I think the whole point of having a vocabulary is that, you know, it's when you find words that, you know, again, going back to the belonging term, right? When you find a word that you belong to, that comfort is amazing. It's like coming home, right? And finding, you know, finding a word that fits. So I think I think the vocabulary is very, very important. And there's two places where you can do this, right? One is at policy level. Immediately, I mean, every organization should try its best to change the vocabulary of its policies. So when we started, say, 10 years ago on our LGBTQ inclusion journey at Godrej, for example, we replaced the word spouse with partner wherever we could. I mean, just that one thing you're indicating in a policy document, you're widening this horizon, you know, and likewise for so many other things, right? So pronouns, etc. So one is in terms of, I think you have to, you know, renew the vocabulary or expand it at a policy level. The second is, of course, at a cultural, when how you choose to interact every day with your colleagues at your workplace, because that's how you change the culture. And that is something that one needs to work on. Also, the vocabulary is constantly evolving. I mean, that's the beauty of language, right? And if you study language, I mean, you know, Ganesh Devi ji, who's one of my favorite linguists in the world, talks about language and how the languages are not static. Languages are constantly evolving and changing over time. So within the LGBTQ lexicon as well, for example, we are constantly learning new things about gender, about sexuality, about frameworks that we want to put ourselves into. And I think it's very important for, you know, individuals and organizations to be in tune with this evolution and just, you know, constantly adapt your vocabulary to reflect the needs and aspirations of your employees. I mean, I think that's the thing, right? Ultimately, everyone, you want to create a harmonious workplace and serve your customers well. And one way of doing that is just by understanding terms that, you know, they would want to use. So I think it's vital to do it from a fundamental perspective. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Parmesh, for summing it up. Shweta, I would like to go further, and I would like you to talk about your university experience. You come from JNU. So,
University experience.
in the sense that, talk about how the culture of inclusiveness and diversity had probably created a certain impact, or had also created divisions. And you can go beyond university as well. I just wanted to include it, but just emphasizing with your own experience that what challenges you would have faced if the vocabulary of inclusion was not there.
Oh, all right. So I think it's so yeah, JNU makes it okay. There is something interesting that I can bring up here, and yeah, JNU. But I would like to talk about in JNU and in universities, central universities in our country. Despite reservation, despite policies, the representation is not happening. So our professors, only 1%. So I think I'm not clear with it, but it is minimal that there is no OBC professor, women professor, and there is 27% reservation. So people would think like, oh, these people have reservation, and but they are not fulfilling it, right? But that's just one instance. I don't want to stick to it, but what I really want to talk about today is the idea and because we are talking about culture of inclusiveness. So I want to talk about Begumpura, where Dalit Saint Sant Ravidas is utopia. But utopia is not something unreal, but it is a dream. It is a vision. and that is grounded in our lived experience, because the way things are, we do not want to them to stay as they are. We want to change that, and that imagination, that vision is some may say, okay, it's not possible. So one may say, okay, it's a utopia, it's not practical, but it is, because it is rooted in our experience. So Begumpura is a city without sorrow. That's the vision of Sant Ravidas. And why I bring Ravidas here, because I see it a lot of time on YouTube. We have Sadhguru, we have Art of Living, we have ISKCON preachers. They go to these companies, and they're talking about life work balance and spirituality, at the same time maintaining that how beautiful caste system is and glorify it. So
Absolutely.
that's very problematic. So
Totally.
how do we come in terms with that? That we know that some of our colleagues are following these people who are constantly, in terms of enhancement of life and spirituality, constantly talking about so demeaning and humiliating caste system, and then say that, okay, it was work based, it was not birth based. But again, what it is doing is, it is again confining people. And so are we able to, that's now that's the bias, how quietly it is functioning in our everyday life, in our workplace, if these kind of people we are subscribing to and really cheering them up for, as they are showing us the way. Does it make sense?
Absolutely.
So I
I'm
think
following.
now we need to, when we talk about Indian heritage, rich Indian heritage, so we need to look at our beautiful ancestors like Ravidas, we have Goraknath, we have Chakamela, so many saints who challenged the caste system, who said, no, everybody belongs. And so Ravidas said, okay, I can make shoes. I am a chamar. But I can pray too. Right?
Belong.
I can talk of love. And when he talks of love, everyone feels belong. Right? So that's very important. And this is not happening. No one knows about them. Why? Why so? So why is it that only when we talk about rich Indian heritage or Indian management with Bhagavad Gita, why not Begumpura? Why only Gita has to guide the management? Why can't Begumpura guide your management? Everybody belongs. A city without sorrow. So that's, I think, I wanted to introduce. Yeah.
Yes. And I think you have made a very important point, Shweta, and I would also like to comment here that we cannot annihilate caste until we keep legitimizing the caste system by saying that, oh, it was just basis work, and it was not birth based, it was work based. So yeah, if we want to annihilate caste, then we need to annihilate the language of caste.
Absolutely.
And I think I would like to now move towards talking about, since it's a corporate event, and talking about how corporates have institutions in where though they were a lot, and this is general comment out there, and this is not I'm not really talking about any specific corporate, but what we have seen is institutions would always have a face of diversity and inclusion because it probably sells. For example, Parmesh, you sort of will understand that in the last few years, we have seen corporates talking more about LGBTQ community, but LGBT community and movement existed since all these years. It started very recently in the corporate world, for whatever reasons it may be. Uh, but what about the inside structure of the corporate? Corporate may put up a placard and say, "Oh, wow, we are diverse. We will have 50% women out there." And this question, I would like to begin from you. That which is a great step, which is a very important step. That even if you are having a placard and saying that we are diverse organization, but what institutional changes of the current power structure need to change to that organization to become more diverse? That is my question. I hope my question is clear.
Thanks, Vandit. That's a great question, and it's something I think about every day. I've written about it. I've acknowledged in the beginning of the book that my position in the corporate world is very marginal. I've kind of got a toehold from which I'm clinging on and kind of trying to open the door for others, knowing full well how tenuous that position is, how fragile it is, and how it exists based on the permission of my corporate patrons. So I think anyone who wants to, who wants to think differently or bring about change, in institutions has to recognize that, right? The solution that I propose, at least now, as a temporary stopgap arrangement, comprises of two steps. One is what I call jugaad resistance, which is very much about, it's combining two words that I like. And I use jugaad not so much to refer to the cobbled together nature of things, but to the resourceful, innovative spirit that many of us have simply because of a lack of alternatives, not because we feel particularly innovative. But it's something that one can tap into to come up with solutions, often when faced with obstacles. And the other is resistance. I use the word resistance very much to talk about how one can change the way that systems work and think by offering alternative solutions, etc. But so to me, jugaad resistance takes place when you place the change makers within the system and you try and change the system from within. One good way is of asking questions, is of saying why. So I give my Godrej journey when 10 years ago I asked why are our HR policies, they don't seem to be LGBTQ inclusive. We took them out, we recognized that there were gaps, and we began that process, right? And then every year it was asking some more whys. Like, why do we not have this? Look, this company has, and you use different levers. Sometimes you say, why do we not have this? Sometimes you say, look, they have started, this company is a gender affirmation surgery already. We are not, I don't like that. So, I mean, you use various levers to bring about that change, right? The second framework that I've used is cultural acupuncture. And I borrow the term from the Harry Potter Alliance, which is a fan network. They use cultural acupuncture very differently. I mean, the meaning of the term is when real world issues, when in the Harry Potter case, the Harry Potter universe is kind of mapped onto real world issues. And then real world communities of fans form to solve these issues. For example, petitioning for a transgender bathroom in a school or things like that, right? So, but they use the Harry Potter universe as a framework to understand, look, what happened when Harry Potter and friends were challenged. They raised Dumbledore's army, right? And then young people can make a difference, or a few people can make a difference. My understanding of cultural acupuncture is slightly different. I tweak it to look at the various experiments that one can engage with in terms of where you press. So I think where you press in terms of your cultural interventions is really, really very important. And I've realized that often, if one presses with senior management, like, in my own experience and that of so many other companies, if you can get the CEO and MD of a company to get behind it, change happens much faster than if it's a bottoms-up grassroots approach. Simply because in India, we're still very hierarchical. In our homes, when our parents say something, we'll do it. In companies, when the MD or CEO says, I want this to happen, suddenly that change happens much faster than if it is something that seeps upwards as well. So these are some interventions that I'm playing with to kind of resolve this, recognizing fully well that the structural inequality that you talk about exists. But I mean, my attempt is to try and create or push organizations to recognize how it is in their own interest to create this more inclusive world, and to equip people who are working in these organizations with the tools, with the frameworks, and with the imagination, as Shweta said so beautifully, of a utopian ideal that we can very well, we deserve to live into. So how do you push? I mean, that has been my journey and my struggle. Yeah, so I'm rambling. I'll keep quiet now. But thank you.
No, that sums up really well. And Mariam, this time I'll come towards the end. To you. And so, Shweta, do you have any points to add that how institutions, they may talk about diversity at the forefront, but there are inherent gaps in the power structures which may persist? which maybe you would have spotted, and would you like to at least bring some in the forefront to this panel?
I think, right? Is it for me or Mariam? I think
It's for you, Shweta.
Oh, okay. Say it again, then you have to, because I think you can, because you started with that. Mariam, I'm coming to you last.
No, yeah. Okay.
I lost the
No
track.
worries, no worries. So I'll repeat myself, Shweta. What I'm asking is, though we have seen corporate culture accepting and talking about diversity, the internal power structure still largely remains the same. Have you observed it as well? And what gaps have you spotted? And this can be universities as well. This can be corporates as well, or any other institutions that as well.
Certainly, I think there is a trend going on in our country, and I have been to be situated in the university where I
Mike, Shweta.
So there is a trend that we all are getting to witness, and that trend, for some reason, is towards homogenizing. And I mean, it's kind of a tricky question because I would get political here. So I'm not sure if I should be speaking
We all
about
are
it.
making it. Politics is not just electoral politics; it's also about our viewpoints.
Okay. So see, you have to see that there is something happening in our country, and for past for past 1 year, there has been too much unrest that has been happening in the universities. So all those things would not have happened in the first place if the decision making was not in the hand of particular people who do not want to acknowledge difference. So be it violence in Jain, be it CEA, anti-CEA protests happening all over the country. And we saw that we could not even have a dialogue. So, and that has been also that kind of unhealthy environment. I think media has also created that has played a major role in creating that. But we see that it is absent. That there is no space to talk about it, and why is it? So even what kind of voices were being raised from the corporate sector when the country has been in such kind of unrest? So, I mean, if you said university, so yeah, university is like, I have been in training for past 4 years, and all I see that the explicit form of homophobia is there. Yeah, I wanted to say Islamophobia, and so yeah, how do we negotiate that? How is it happening that students are asking for justice for Najib and for Rohit, and we are not able to put it out there and invoke empathy in the rest of the people. But it comes as, all right, these are fringe elements that are telling us that there's something wrong with us, like with the structure or with the system. I think that also happens with people when they make noise, when they decide, okay, I want to speak for myself, I want to speak for my people. So how are you viewed as there? How when you choose to speak for yourself, how are you conceived? And that's again we come to the basic, that's very, yeah. So I would, I think I'm getting deeper here. But primarily what I'm trying to say is this is a phenomena that is happening all over the country, including the corporate or academia, that certain kind of decision making is happening, and students, Dalits, Muslims, and other marginalized communities, when they're raising it, they are being told that you are causing unrest, or you are anti-national, or you are you're not pro-growth, you're regressive. And so yeah, these kind of things are what people get to hear when, or you're not cooperating towards the larger goal. So I do not have much exposure, or I haven't participated in the corporate functioning, but I definitely think that even in academia, especially in higher education, that's how things are as well. That you are not looking at the higher and like the larger goal, the larger scheme of things. And in philosophy, we call it utilitarianism, where it is all right if the maximum people are happy, then the minorities or minimum number of people can suffer, and that can be called justice. And most of our policies are actually derived from this philosophical understanding, which is called utilitarianism. And I would again repeat that if majority is benefiting, so minority of or less number of people, and that would be all right. So, but instead of settling with that, we need to keep even if it is a problem that we don't know who to save and how many people need to be given up on, but we need to keep asking these questions instead of making it the way of life. That's how it is. If you are lesser people, then you're gonna like lose because it is for the benefit of the larger community or the nation's interest or the company's interest or the university interest. So what kind of ethics is guiding us in our everyday life, in our spheres like education, corporate, and government, health sector as well? So yeah, this is what I would say.
Great. I think that's
Because
very eye-opening, Shweta. Mariam, do you have any points to add to information Shweta have said?
Yeah,
What you
thanks
want to
for
say?
they've kind of covered everything in a way. Thank you, Shweta and Parmesh, for highlighting some very, very important aspects, especially when it comes to every kind of institution. The one example I want to give, we always have this term, and more people have been adopting it as that the personal is political, right? I've also a lot of times heard in my professional spaces that it's just professional, don't take it personally. And what I want to highlight is that you don't necessarily always carry a different personality when you're entering your workplace, when you're entering an institution. So the personal is political, is professional, I would say. And I remember, especially last year in December, when the attacks on Jamia started, I was working here, and I couldn't work. There were days where I always felt I was like literally a zombie walking into office because there was so much happening back at home, and it was so troubling that I eventually sat down with one of my team members who is the manager, and I told him, I said, "Do you know what's happening back in India? Do you know we have people from India who work here, and it is something that you can't just ignore. We can't always pretend that things, oh, you just like take a shower, have your breakfast, go to work, and suddenly the door of office opens and everything's black and white. And there's so much baggage, there's so much emotional baggage that we are carrying. There's so much responsibility that we carry as citizens, that it's impossible to just distill things easily. There is no black and white. There was never any black and white, you know. And the very concept of, I feel like the idea behind starting what is now a podcast of Maybe Muslim was because even as a secondary witness to what was happening back in India, I knew that anywhere that I am, I can do my part to make a better society, to have a solidarity movement, to have, as Shweta said, have a belonging to where we are in this world. And if only each one of us recognizes that when we step into our office spaces, that my work is not defined by the profile I have. My work is defined by the contribution I make to the society. I think that would make a whole lot of difference. And I mean, again, thank you to all three of you for highlighting that, because I mean, even now when I'm saying it, I'm just like, no, the personal is the political, and you can never ever forget that.
I would like to add one thing here. Is that all right, Parmesh?
Yeah,
Can
yeah.
I? Okay,
Please,
I
by all
also
means.
want to highlight this one thing that it is again we come back to the bias, and I would like I have tried to stick to the basics. And again, this whole bias thing. So we think that there is mind and then there is body, and no matter what is happening into your body, to your surroundings, you can
Shweta,
work when. No matter what
Sorry.
is happening, no problem. So no matter what is happening to your body, what is happening to your surroundings, you have a mind which is separate and you can work. This is the understanding. So this is a liberal understanding that mind is different and body is different. And we have come to understand now with the, of course, the movement is within philosophy that we get to see that, all right, so this is not how it is. We live in this body and we are affected and we live in this world and we are interconnected. So our mind is connected with our body. My body is like, as I exist, I am connected to the other person and we are connected to the world. So we need to acknowledge this interconnectedness. We cannot say no matter what is happening to you, you can still work.
Yeah.
That's a kind of, I think that's a kind of a violence that we constantly exercise on our counterparts, among our friends, and yeah, within the workspace. So there is no
On
room for
ourselves as well,
empathy.
right? I mean, on
Abs-
ourselves as well. When we exercise that kind of
Absolutely,
violence on ourselves, we validate it, you know.
absolutely.
And we need to invalidate that. I think the more you invalidate that kind of violence and you renegotiate the part that you play, you give so many others the kind of freedom to think like that, you know.
Yeah,
Again,
absolutely.
I'm using the term give, but I just feel that it's a feeling. It's a feeling
Yeah.
when I'm speaking to you, and you don't really need to encourage me, but the way you generate that energy to participate is what will make me realize what my participation can account for.
Absolutely. We need affirmations. We need to share that with each
Yeah,
other.
yes.
Affirmations for ourselves, affirmations for each other. We do need that. Yeah. So I would say, like, so even this language of learning and unlearning, I'm like, all right. So, we can be able to see this as process and then say,
Yes.
all right, we acknowledge how we were and here we are, that we can be something else and that can be better and that could be more enabling, more accepting, more loving. So yeah, that way. And safe is the most important because these whole biases and microaggression is again a form of violence and that makes us feel unsafe. So I don't know how it was for you, Mariam, to walk into your office with these anxieties of confusions about citizenship or belonging to the nation, to the land. So, and to not being able to find that kind of support system in your workplace where, it is like it is people acknowledge that anxiety
Mm.
and then help you and support you to perform, to work, and to practice what you're doing already. So yeah, that's,
Great. It's a
I've
very high
taken so
point.
much space. I'm sorry.
No, no. It was a very high point of, I think, our panel. Parmesh, do you want to add any point or just your thoughts? Because you look very intense.
I was just listening. I was just listening, and I was just feeling right and sharing the space. I think that's so important as well. And I think for anyone who's listening this from the corporate world, right, I hope you can recognize how important belonging is to everyone. So Shweta, Maria, I take these emotions and which is, and I add a business case on it because being in the business world, and given that we're talking to insurers, it's all about the numbers. So I add these feelings. I add the mix of numbers and I tell them that, uh, you know, it really matters from belonging perspective. But did you know that the global LGBTQ economy is $5 trillion? And did you know that in India itself it's $200 billion? So, uh, and not either or, but I think a combination of both usually does the trick, at least in my experience.
Great. I just have a last question. I think we are in the last 5 minutes of the panel, and I would like to just quickly know your points. I wanted to touch also about BCPs, but that's maybe later. But I think one quick point, each one of you, starting from Mariam, Parmesh, and then with Shweta, that why is equal representation important for a just society? And and on that note, then we can conclude.
Um, I don't I think I would not want to exist in any other kind of world. It's important because that is the way this world can function. We have so many stories in us. And if we suppress those stories, this world is not becoming the world it is supposed to be. And I think our stories define us. And when we tell our stories, the idea of violence it will eventually be eliminated because our stories will have that kind of empathy for each one of us.
Yeah, thanks, Maria.
So I'm going to add to that by just saying that, from just a pure business sense, I mentioned numbers earlier, but I think where we are in the world is we're in a lot of trouble in so many ways. Whether you look at resources, whether you look at climate change, whether you look at the vast, gaps in terms of inequality of citizens, but whichever way you look at it, there's a lot of, we're in deep trouble. And I think now the time has come for us to collaborate across different silos. So for governments, companies, organizations, citizens, to recognize that a lot of the solutions to these issues are not going to come by doing what used to be business as usual before. There has to be a new way of understanding, of reaching out and collaborating and solving some of these challenges. And I think when you include and when in this solution, when the solutions are coming about, the more diverse teams that are there on the table that make the solutions happen, the better your chances are of coming up with a solution that's actually viable. If it's 10 men all trying to innovate on a better sanitary napkin, it's going to be very, very difficult, right? It's just, and there have been enough case studies in terms of this, in terms of B schools, etc. There were so many innovation teams and companies for years, which were all men, and they were trying to innovate on products in which even the presence of one woman would have made a big difference. So I'm just saying, just like that, right? We need more diverse teams everywhere, in our universities, in our workplaces. We need to accept diversity in our families because that is going to be a big part of the solution to moving towards a better world. Otherwise, if we don't create this kind of inclusive world, then the world as we know it, I think, has a very limited shelf life. I don't think we're going to solve our way out of a lot of these problems. The pandemic has shown us this. So I think for our own interest and survival, if that matters to us, we need to be more diverse and inclusive to survive. As basic as that.
Great. Shweta, the last.
So representation. So I think again we go to the basic. What's the goal? What are we trying to do? And if that is the betterment, that better life. So I think for better life for whom again is the question. And if the business approach is that we have to the goals, like millennial goals are there. I'm sorry, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. So basically, again, we come like, what are we aspiring to achieve? And if it is harmony, and if it is the well-being of each person in the society, and how do we do that? And the problems of the people, it is important. Those people whose problem we are trying to solve should be there. And so yeah, that's I think I would say that makes it better, because our goal is to make better world. So in that better world, you need to first acknowledge my existence. To first say that, okay, Shweta has a problem as a woman. You need to first acknowledge my presence as a woman. You have to acknowledge my presence as a denotified nomadic community member. You have to acknowledge histories and people. And when we say, okay, we are now moving together to make a better world for whom? For everybody. So everybody needs to be there. That's the thing, yeah.
Awesome. Very, very brilliantly sum up, Shweta. If you're making a world for everybody, then everybody has to be there. Great. I think, thank you so much, Mariam, Parmesh, Shweta, for coming on the panel. It was a lovely, lovely discussion. Thank you
Mhm.
to Team AIG, Suguna, and everybody for curating this panel and giving us a complete freedom and space to talk our hearts out. I hope we added some value to this small 1 hour that was given to us. Yes, thank you, everyone. Over to Shreya.
Thank you so much. As I sit here listening to you guys talk about all of these things, I think I'll just sum it up in 4 lines. Let's ensure and ensure belonging. Let's ensure and ensure culture and acceptance. Let's ensure and ensure diversity and inclusion, because I think the change starts with all of us. And insurance or not, I think, like Parmesh said, the world today needs action and needs voices. Thank you all so much for sharing. Thank you all so much for spending this hour, I think, enlightening us about so many nuances which we perhaps in our everyday lives of business and the monotony of it don't really think about. So I think this has been eye-opening in so many ways. So thank you so much for steering this conversation also. I think it was truly something that sort of brought everything we were talking about together. Thank you,
Thank
Shweta
you.
and Vandit and Parmesh and Mariam.
Good to
Thank
see
you
you
so
all.
much.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank
Take
you. It was
care.
a
Thank you.
pleasure and an honor. Bye. Take care and thank you so much. Thank you.